During an average NFL game, you only watch about 11 minutes of actual gameplay. The rest is replays, pauses, and...
say their name.
Commercials. Nowadays, everybody talks about them. The crazy costs, the unpredictability, the controversy. Some people even watch the game just for the commercials. They have become a cultural phenomenon and helped to turn the Super Bowl into the most watched TV broadcast since the moon landing. But it wasn't always like that. The turning point was in 1984, when Apple aired a commercial that was unlike anything people had seen. It didn't just sell a product, it changed the Super Bowl forever. Welcome to Athletic Interest. Who is the coolest kid in high school? The guy she tells you not to worry about, the captain of the football team. And that's for 3 reasons: American culture, the structure of a football game, and Apple. So first, the captain of the football team should thank these 2 guys. American football is deeply rooted in history and common culture because in 1967, the 2 rival football leagues had one goal: maximizing profit from the exponentially growing television market. Their solution: have the best teams compete against each other to crown one national champion. And 65 million people tuned in. A third of America's population at that time. For a brand new format that was long before Taylor Swift and flashy halftime shows. American football as a sport worked. The new championship format made it even cooler. That's how this guy became a big deal. The second reason: the structure of a football game. NFL games are split into 4 15-minute quarters with a 12 to 13-minute halftime. But in reality, a game lasts over 3 hours, thanks to all the clock stoppages, timeouts, and you guessed it, commercial breaks. The NFL broadcasts are among the most interrupted broadcasts of any sport. For comparison, a Premier League game. So what are we actually watching? According to the Wall Street Journal, a typical NFL broadcast breaks down like this. Instead of 60 minutes, we actually only get to watch around 11 minutes of actual playing time. The rest is replay and players standing around. Commercials, a good distraction, and there is a lot of distraction. The average NFL fan watches about 4 hours of NFL per week. Including playoffs, there are 21 weeks of NFL coverage during a season. That means the fan accumulates a total watch time of about 88 hours. And 1/3 of that, so 29 hours, are ads. Basically, fans lose 4 workdays a season watching ads. The upside: companies nowadays spend a fortune on Super Bowl slots, so at least these ads are way more entertaining. They've become must-see TV moments. And this is because of Apple. The first Super Bowl in 1967 was a far cry from the extravaganza we know today. Fast forward 1 year, and halftime featured an airplane parade, backed by the US military. That's when brands started seeing the potential. By the late 60s and 70s, Super Bowl ads became a thing. Also because they were cheap. Especially noteworthy was this Coca-Cola ad featuring Mean Joe Green.
Hey kid. Whole world is smiling with me. Coca-Cola has life. Have a Coke.
Thanks, Mean Joe.
It was quoted by Sesame Street, The Simpsons, Family Guy, David Beckham, and won an award for Best Commercials of the Year. But most of the commercials at that time were straightforward, focusing on product features rather than storytelling or emotions. Plain and simple explicit sales pitches. That changed drastically in 1984. During the 3rd quarter of Super Bowl 28, Apple dropped a bombshell. They weren't there to sell a product. They were there to make a statement. The ad was called 1984, inspired by George Orwell's novel, and it was like nothing anyone had seen before. No jingles, no cheesy humor, not even a glimpse of the Macintosh itself. Instead, the ad was about ideas, freedom, creativity, and individuality. Ridley Scott, the guy behind Alien and Blade Runner, directed it, giving it that bold, cinematic vibe. It was only 60 seconds long, but it stayed in people's minds much longer. They realized this wasn't just a commercial, it was a cultural moment. Apple's decision to produce and air 1984 was not without controversy. The ad was quite expensive, but Steve Jobs believed it was a necessary investment to position Apple as a revolutionary brand. The board was less convinced. They thought it was too weird, too risky, and didn't really explain the product. Early test screenings didn't help, the results were bad. Also, if the ad failed, it could damage Apple's image and waste a significant portion of its marketing budget. Steve Jobs didn't care, and he secured a slot during Super Bowl 28, although he didn't even know what the Super Bowl was. He just wanted to create something that stopped people in their tracks on the biggest stage possible, and that's exactly what he did. The ad exceeded every expectation. It was basically going viral before going viral was even a thing. Imagine they had TikTok back then. The Macintosh launch was just days later, and Apple sold over 70,000 units in the first 100 days. But Apple's 1984 also revolutionized the Super Bowl experience. Inspired by 1984, advertisers realized that times were changing. They were no longer just selling products, they were trying to craft moments that people would talk about. From now on, Super Bowl commercials would become a center part of the whole broadcast. And more elaborate. More money spent by the brands, more money made by the NFL, more entertainment for the audience. This money trickled down to the players, who became some of the richest athletes in the business, and suddenly had to look for investment opportunities. Which brings us to today's video sponsor, Masterworks. Because many of the billionaire team owners and players we discuss on the channel try to diversify their investments. In fact, in 2023, Deloitte estimated that high net worth individuals across the globe hold over $2.2 trillion in fine art and collectibles. Some of the most exclusive investments of all. That number is even projected to hit almost $2.9 trillion in 2026. Investing in art is so popular among the rich because it has shown to outpace traditional investments like the S&P 500 for the last 30 years. That's why you should check out today's sponsor, Masterworks. While we are not investors ourselves, this art investing platform already has over $1 billion of invested capital from over 60,000 active investors. With previous art offerings featuring legends like Picasso, Banksy, and Basquiat. Masterworks' most recent sale was actually another Basquiat in 2024, which sold for $8 million after 1,398 days. And for every $10,000 someone invested in that piece, they took home over $2,600 in profit, even after fees. You don't need to be a billionaire or an art expert to get involved, and viewers can skip Masterworks' waitlist and start investing today with the QR code on screen, the link in the description, or at masterworks.art/athletic-interest. And now, back to the story. In the 90s, advertisers fully embraced humor and celebrity endorsements as key strategies. In the 2000s, Super Bowl ads became bigger, bolder, and more expensive. The audience grew, and so did the marketing budgets. And then, social media arrived, and once again changed the game drastically. Back in the day, Super Bowl ads were tightly guarded secrets, airing just once. Apple's 1984 only aired during the game. That exclusivity created maximum aura. Now, companies employ marketing campaigns that often start weeks or even months before the Super Bowl. So they are not just paying for that 30-second commercial spot. Instead, they try to create a 4 to 6 week buzz across multiple platforms. This is one of the first standout examples of this new trend. It had racked up 17 million views before kickoff and became the most shared Super Bowl ad of all time. Super Bowl commercials have become large-scale productions, with budgets rivaling Hollywood movies. That is why companies try everything to maximize exposure. The commercials can be seen as an annual snapshot of the economic and social moment in the country. They try to capture the zeitgeist. Take the infamous crypto commercial in 2022. Or the fact that health and beauty companies suddenly invested in Super Bowl ads after Taylor Swift boosted female viewership. At $7 million for a 30-second spot, the stakes are higher than ever. But so are the rewards. The Super Bowl consistently draws over 200 million viewers worldwide. And every year, there is huge anticipation for what might happen during the commercials. Nobody is flipping the channel. You could miss something historic. Or you don't. Speaking of brand awareness, Apple's visionary commercial played a big role in the Super Bowl becoming not only one of sports' biggest events, but also an advertising powerhouse. For over 40 years, brands have been trying to capture their own 1984 moment, always trying to create something that people talk more about than the actual game. For now, Apple's 1984 is still the measuring stick, a shining example why the advertising industry invests so much money in a few seconds of screen time. It's not about advertising for the Super Bowl. It's about creating a myth that lives on. And also because of Apple's iconic ad. The Super Bowl is the perfect stage for this. Not just for showcasing athleticism, but also, if not even more, capitalism.